Thank you.
I hope I'm very well audible to everyone. A very good morning in the first place. I am Neelu Jawla, presently heading Giri Goenka Public School, Delhi NCR. Today, we are going to talk about innovative approaches and education in an era of inconsequential competition. Let me talk about the header first that you are seeing on the screen right ahead. Everybody has been knowing about innovative approach, and there have been multiple of them available. Learning is a humongous kind of an approach. It's a humongous term, and it is inevitable. It doesn't matter it is good or it is bad. It is ever developing, be in the formal setup or the informal setup. So when we talk about the 21st century students, we cannot take the age-old kind of approaches, the pedagogy and the methodology when it comes to teaching. Now, what is inconsequential? Inconsequential here in a specific means the blind competition that's invisible. But ultimately, the child who is in the pressure of being multitudinal in all eras, in all the spheres, when we talk about the holistic development. But have we actually ever thought about, as facilitators or teachers or leaders in education or the principals, that what this holistic development is? So this very idea of preparing the students who are doing equally well in academics, in sports, and in all other fields of life. Have we ever thought that as a facilitator, how can I upgrade myself to meet the needs of 21st century learners? What can I do as a facilitator to update myself? So today, I'm going to talk about the innovative approaches in education and how we can make the learning happen, the brainstorming happen, and the skill happen in this era wherein the children, the demand is never ending. So what is an ideal teaching? There are multiple methods you all have talked about, studied about, discussed about, have attended the workshops and seminars about. Ideal teaching, and how do we define that? Do we actually have somebody who is an ideal teacher? So it all depends on the topography of a city, the kind of methods that we use with the students, how we have shifted from the teacher-centered learning towards the student-centered learning. But there is no set definition of what ideal teaching is. And the second question is, what makes a learner holistically developed actually? Success cannot be measured in terms of the money or in terms of the packages that they're going to grab in the college placement or the campus placement. Whatever I'll talk about or whatever I have said, there would be many who would disagree to it. With the little experience of 18 years that I have earned so far, I'm just making a point. If there is a disagreement, you can post your questions ahead. So let us begin with the retrospection that is open to everybody. What retrospection of a 21st century facilitator will look like? There's always this buzz about the 21st century skills and 21st century learner, wherein we have failed to talk about the 21st century facilitator. And the very first question that I can think about is, what can I do in my own capacity as a teacher, as a guide, as a facilitator to establish a connect and to communicate the learning objectives, be them they are the short-term learning objectives or the long-term? And how can I help the learner to achieve the fullest potential and make it all success? When failure is the stepping stone in this process that we call the achieving success in life ahead. Have we ever posed that question to us? The next food for the thought is, what can I do to help the learner gaining knowledge, establishing relation with the previous one, and to effectively interact with a mindset to create new? When we talk about knowledge, knowing something, how can we forget cognition, the application of the same knowledge? So when as facilitators, we prepare our lessons beforehand, and when we take up the approaches to teach a particular topic in class, have we ever devised it keeping in mind that what application of the particular topic the learner is going to gain and how he's going to or she's going to relate it to the real life? That's question for the self. The next is, what can I do to help the learner practicing brainstorming, mind-boggling, and intriguing deeper and understanding the loopholes? The students, they are modeled to be successful. And at times, we as adults, as facilitators, as coaches and guides, we forget that failure is also the part of this process. So they have to be processed for not only success, but also for failures, because they are the stepping stones wherein they can intrigue you deeper and deeper into the reasons why they have failed. And if I, as facilitator, I have failed in my approach, so what's next? What's the solution to it? And the last, what can I do to engage the students constructively, collaboratively, and maintaining effective relationship amongst the group? So these are certain questions that you can ponder about next time before you plan your lesson. Now, learning objectives, activities, and assignments. These three, they had already, always been confused. When we plan a lesson, we talk about certain kind of objectives, the general objectives and the specific objectives. Also, we talk about the handouts, where in the hand of learning, it has been taking, it is quite a pedagogy that has been talked about, and what assignment or the evaluation and the assessment I can provide. So there had been a difference between all these three. For instance, let's discuss this example. Students would be able to understand the process of thermodynamic effect. Is it a learning objective? Can it be an activity, or can it be the part of assessment? Or students review the chapter on the consequences of Indo-Prussian War. I tried to make this session in particular interesting and providing multiple examples related to all the subjects and all the levels. Or students would compare the use of technology in World War I and World War II. Can it be an activity or an assessment or a learning objective? Or students, after reading a certain hypothesis or a theorem, will be able to demonstrate via experiment. We have taken a lot of Bloom's taxonomy here. Or students, after reading the chapter, will write a critical analysis. So certain kind of terms and the syntax you all must have used in your plans so far. A few more to brainstorm about here. The students will be able to emphasize with the differentially abled and will develop a great respect for them after reading the account of Helen Keller. So all the people who have been taking English in the senior grades, they would acquaint with that. Students will understand the tone, the theme, mood, central idea of the poem. The students will be able to comprehend about the plot, theme, genre, conflict, and resolution of the novel, and will be able to create a reasonable hypothesis for a simple experiment and compare their hypothesis to the experiment's outcome. So it all depends as a facilitator on us, how we relate that to our activities, worksheets, the lesson objectives, or the assessment. We can convert each one of it as per own desire and make the learning happen in a natural environment. Curiosity is something that we all need to develop among the learners. Then the class can never be a boring class, right? Now let's talk about the lesson objectives. There are two terms that I often relate with it, the declarative and the procedural knowledge. Both are pretty different from each other. So as we talked about knowledge and cognition, gyan or sangyan, both are different. Similar way, when we plan out our learning objectives. For instance, let us take this example. If I ask you, student will understand and a blank, and they will be able to and a blank. So something that as a facilitator, as a teacher, I'm filling after will able to understand is the part of the facilitator that he or she needs to facilitate in the classroom to enhance the understanding level so that the child will know about it, will understand the concept. So conceptualization is also very important before he would be able to demonstrate something, able to hypothesize something, able to present, able to prepare a project. So both are different. So one is a declarative knowledge, declarative, wherein as a facilitator or as a teacher, I'm making a declaration to myself, once I have taught this particular topic, what my learner will be able to understand and up to what level. It seems to quite a technical and kind of a colossal task to us, but once when we define the learning objective to ourselves before entering the classroom, but of course, the students will get it a better way. Ultimately, as a teacher, my task, my objective is to prepare a child who will intrigue you further in that topic, rather than he will be a rote learner, mugging up everything and vomiting out in the examination. So let us discuss it without any further ado. Students will understand what? Will understand dynamics involved in stretching of the hamstring muscle. And what you'll be able to do, you'll be able to demonstrate the proper form. This example is specifically for the physical education instructors. Let's move to physics now. Students will be able to understand what? They'll be able to understand the magnetic dipole moment, and they will be able to draw schematic diagram for current sensitivity and voltage sensitivity. I can change this slightly and asking the students to put the differences between the schematic diagram of the current sensitivity and voltage sensitivity further. I can further develop a theorem based on it. So it's not happening very naturally, and can only happen naturally when the teacher will pose that kind of an environment. And for posing that kind of environment, we need to pre-prepare ourselves first. Let's take a few more examples quickly. They'll be able to understand the types of network topologies. It's for the IP teacher informatic practices required for connecting network, and be able to tell how coaxial cable is different from optical fiber. So it's not only the Bloom taxonomy that we are taking into consideration. At the same time, we are relating our knowledge that will impart in the classroom about a certain topic and making it connected to the real life. How my student will be using it further, what benefit it poses to my students. And once it will happen, rote learning is not going to take place at all. Now, this is a DIY box. I like to experiment a lot when it comes to the classroom teaching. DIY, you all know very well, stands for do it yourself. So this is just a question here. It's a small task. Identify a learning goal you have addressed recently and describe one activity and one assignment that might accompany that goal. We already have discussed multiple examples related to several subjects before in the previous slides. So I hope there's a further clarity between how we can address a learning goal, what activity we can have for the students, what activity we can plan out, and in form of what, and what assessment we can go ahead with, catering to the needs of the students. We all know that classroom is a heterogeneous group, wherein each learner has a specific learning needs and each learner is different. And individual differences, they are what make us actually beautiful in its own way. Now let's explore further the few more subjects. Let's take an example on the similar lines for mathematics. Students will be able to use an ordered pair to plot a point on a graph or vice versa, identify and solve linear equations from looking at a graph, that's a goal here, and will time each other in groups to see who can plot the most points on a graph. That's an assignment. So how beautifully we can keep the learning objective, the activity, and the assignment all together in a single statement, right? So there's one single targeted statement over there. Let's talk about the language arts. For instance, students will understand the rules of punctuation and will be able to correct mistakes in their own writing, that has to be own writing, and we identify punctuation errors on a handout. So we can pre-plan that handout for the students. Let's go ahead with sciences. This example is specifically for the science teachers. Students will understand how weather patterns, they change locally. We'll be able to measure those changes using basic tools, that's a goal and the activity together, and to be able to write the weather forecast information, the high and the low temperatures, and the precipitation in daily journal. So we have taken the project-based learning, the collaborative learning, the learning goal, the activity, and the assignment all together, all purpose solved. Now let's talk about the innovative approaches. There had been this innovation cell in CBSE functioning since long, right? And they do come up with one or the other new thing every year. So today I'm going to talk about, out of my experience, that what innovative approaches, they work wonder in classroom. There had been a lot of debate happening about the interdisciplinary approach or the multidisciplinary approach. In fact, there's the art integration approach that CBSE has made compulsory for grade 9 to grade 12. So let's discuss quickly about the interdisciplinary or the intradisciplinary approaches, and then we'll pick up one and we'll discuss that. Intradisciplinary, that's working within a single discipline. That's something everybody knows out there. Cross-disciplinary, viewing one discipline from the perspective of another. So we're not merging multiple subjects together, but we are grouping them. Multidisciplinary, at the other hand, wherein we take into consideration multiple subjects, we take a content and we see to it what it has to offer in a particular subject. Then we have the interdisciplinary, that is integrating the methods from the various disciplines and using a real synthesis of approaches further. And the transdisciplinary, creating a unity of intellectual frameworks beyond the disciplinary perspectives, and that is what we call thinking out of the box. And today we are going to talk about cross-curriculum content pedagogy. It worked wonders in the classroom. For that, I have taken an example of Bhopal gas tragedy. You all must have heard about it. So as a facilitator, what I have to do is I have to prepare a complete comprehension based on this incident that had happened in 1984. So we're not going to talk about the BGT. We all know that it's available, and you can take up that comprehension passage. Now, what it has to offer in relation to a particular subject. Let's have a look. This is very beautiful, the kind of pedagogy that work wonders in classroom. For instance, if I have to take the CCP, or we also call it triple CP basically offers all facilitators to come on the same platform to talk about the possibilities of cognition in their own subject, wherein the material, the instruction material, remains the same. So if, for instance, we have taken this paragraph that is related to Bhopal gas tragedy, what an English teacher can offer. Well, an English teacher at different grades, different levels, can simply offer a comprehension, the reading passage, an informative passage. It had been the intact part of the syllabus for all the grades. Also, extending it ahead, we can talk about the creative writing, wherein we can ask the student to narrate a man's suffering who had suffered that disaster. So slipping in somebody else's shoes and understanding the trauma that they had been into. Also can talk about the extradition treaties between India and USA. What had been the changes in Indian policy towards companies and environment protection after that? The timeline of occupational hazards of the Union Carbide India Limited plant leading before the disaster. So it's not only one thing, there are multiple things we can relate there related to the same instruction material. Let's talk about geography here. The population implications of the tragedy. What was the effect of periodic wind, the northeast monsoon winds? The physics teacher can talk about the dispersion and stimulation of Bhopal gas tragedy, the issues and modalities of the structure that led to the calamity, and also can talk about the rectification strategy that students have to offer. So in this way, we have extended the topic that provide the child with some original problem rather than learning what's there in the books, what books they have to offer. So this particular strategy, this pedagogy, we can take at least twice in a year. Next, the few more examples for the different subjects. Chemistry. Chemistry teacher can talk about the composition of methyl isocyanate, the production, its uses, its alternatives. Also the chemicals that were dumped by Union Carbide management in and around the factory from 1969 to 1984 specifically. Also can ask the students to work on a featured model that would be based on the dry deposition and the aqueous phase conversion of MiC with the humid atmosphere. At the same time, the biology teacher can talk about the effect of MiC, methyl isocyanate, on plant life, livestock, and humans, its use and abuse, the impacts of reversible reaction of glutathione with methyl isocyanate on human body. So that is how this particular pedagogy, so beautifully, it enhances and it moves from one form to another, from one subject to another, and providing the facilitator with the particular method, how they can relate all the subjects together in a string, in a single string. The math teacher can talk about the compensation.
Sorry to interrupt you, Ms. Neelu. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. We have 5 minutes left and we have some questions lined up here posted by the audience.
Yeah, it's just going to work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
A similar way for maths, for the second language, and for physical education as well. There can be a mass drill to educate and edify the students what can be done during such calamities, or a project work based on the steps to be taken. Also economics, entrepreneurship, they can think on the lines what kind of aid would have been needed by those survivors, or may propose a philanthropic, at the same time a cooperative business plan ahead. So there are more examples. I've tried to make it a point to each and every subject teacher that what it has to offer. So triple CP is a must-try pedagogy in the classroom, and to make the teaching learning more effective, more impactful, and more interesting. So thank you so very much.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. Can you close your PPT and expand your camera screen, please, so that the audience can have a better view?
Yeah, sure.
The others, can you please mute yourself?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am. So the first question, like, you have covered 90% of all the answers here itself. Still, I would like to read out those to you. Could you provide examples of schools or institutions that have successfully implemented innovative approaches in education to tackle inconsequential competition, ma'am? This question is asked by Mr. Pratap.
Okay. So first of all, when we talk about the innovative approaches, and I believe in our country, each and every doing it. Also, at the same time, specifically, I would like to talk about Assam Valley. You must have heard about it.
Yes,
Birla Vidya Mandir, SNF, Shivnadar Foundation. So there are schools who had been not only developing their innovation, but also they had been using it. As I have said previously already, works wonder in the class.
इसने correction के लिए
Miss
notebook नहीं
Manisha,
दी है.
Miss
notebook
Manisha,
यहाँ पर
can
नहीं
you
है.
please mute yourself, please?
दिव्यांशी.
Otherwise, please leave the meeting room. Miss Manisha, can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The second question again is asked by Mr. Pratap. How do you define innovative approaches in the context of education and why are they important? You have already answered this question in your introduction itself, but if you can just please throw some more light on it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, definitely. So, Mr. Pratap, you must have heard about teaching is both art and science. Art in the sense that it involves a specific script and it is flexible. It is inventive and it is creative. Science in terms of it requires certain kind of pedagogies, certain kind of methodologies, right? So why innovation is required? So I'd just like to answer your question in single line. When the students, they change every year in classroom, right? How can we use the same kind of pedagogy and approaches to the learner that have changed all over these years? So these are 21st century learners. They are very smart, smarter than us. When during our schooling, we did not have any access to Google, to internet, to all the gadgets, to all the gizmos, to all the possible kind of learning material available out there. So in those years, we were all dependent on the teachers. But this child is very smart, smarter than beyond what we can think about when ChatGPT and artificial intelligence is just like available in a single click. So if we not update ourselves, will not provide innovation in teaching methodology or pedagogy for that matter, how can we cater to the need of this learner? I hope that answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. So what role does technology play in fostering innovation within the education sector, ma'am?
See, Praveena, ma'am, technology is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. But I would like to ask a question in return to you. How can technology or AI or ChatGPT or the smart classes, they can replace the human touch? We not only teach content in class, we make those lifetime bond with our learners. And I hope everybody would agree to that.
Yes.
So in times of emotional dilemma, in time of a conflict, when it's very difficult for the child to make a certain decision, and that may be a life-threatening decision, so therein AI fails completely. So technology is here to stay. I'm not denying that fact. It is required. So it is an aid to the facilitators, completely agree to that, but it cannot replace the teachers.
Right, ma'am.
Yeah.
Right. So how can educators strike a balance between promoting healthy competition and avoiding the negative effects of competition?
See, there's always how we say that in Hindi, ki ati har cheez ki buri hoti hai. Extent of everything is bad.
True.
So when we channelize our students' energy, when we provide the proper food for the thought, as we say, there has to be more fire in their belly, and they do already have it. So when we foster to all those needs and demands of theirs, but of course, we don't have to put a proper kind of, the effort to channelize it further. If we are planning everything properly, you must have heard about the annual pedagogy plans. So when we are planning annual pedagogy for our school, for our learning community, so we have to take the technology as a part, like providing the student with something called techno quiz for that matter, Also organizing certain kind of competitions wherein they come up with the PowerPoint presentations. We can relate it to any subject for that matter. So technology will stay here. It will not go anywhere, right? Everything has a positive and negative. So if we focus more on positive, our kids will definitely focus more on it. And we have to prepare this generation for the kind of jobs that are still not there, right? So
Right.
yeah, they have to be skilled in all kind of approaches, in all eras, in all kind of methods for that matter, right?
Agreed, ma'am. So what challenges do educators face when trying to implement innovative approaches, and how can these challenges be overcome?
So being truthful to your question, this question in particular, maximum teachers, they talk about innovative approaches, but they fail to drag themselves out of the traditional teaching. They find it very easy going to the classroom and teaching a certain chapter, doing the question answers or the pertaining exercise to it. So the main problem that is with the facilitator is they do talk about innovation, innovative approaches, and a different pedagogy altogether, but they're not ready to adapt with it, number one. Number two, there had been the lack of proper training to the faculty, right? Still, there are people who are teacher by chance, not by choice, right? They fail to unlearn something they had been knowing all these years and to learn something new. So see, comfort zone is a perfect place, right? But nothing grows there. So they need to come out, and it's very easy to teach the children. It's very difficult to teach the adults.
Okay. So as a principal, did you implement any training programs for your staff, ma'am, like to create this innovative approach, or any such kind of workshops are conducted for the teachers?
Yes, there had to be. GD Goenka has 120 schools all over the country. And they invest a lot of energy, a lot of time in teachers' training. So they are scheduled training. Apart from that, we also call the specialists from different industries. Also, we have in-house training. So for instance, if a teacher or group of teachers have attended certain kind of a workshop, they do come back and share their experiences with everybody else. Also, we have capacity building programs specifically for educators, and we call it Train the Trainer program. So there had been a proper effort towards this as well.
Great to know, ma'am. Can you share some insights on how curriculum design is evolving to incorporate innovative methods which are good for students?
But when we talk about the curriculum, we need to understand that it is a huge term. It's a colossal term, right? And before the session begins in the month of April, all different departments and faculties, they need to sit together and plan the curriculum. When we talk about curriculum, it is often confused with the annual pedagogy plan, or it is often confused with the syllabus bifurcation, though it has a lot more to offer. For instance, if I'm a mathematics teacher, I may be a very good teacher, right? I may be very wise and intellectual, but if I fail to provide that intellect to my students, and fail to pass on that to my students, right? I'm good for nothing. So when we talk about the curriculum plans in a specific, as a department, as a subject teacher, I need to plan out my learning objectives first. What I'm going to teach in grade 9 or grade 10, for that matter, grade 11 or 12, what I'm going to teach whole year, then how I'll teach it. So how of learning is also important when we lay a more emphasis on what of learning. So when we cater to what of learning and then how of learning, how that particular thing will happen. And in that process, what worksheet, what handout, what debate, what group discussion, whatever I'm going to take, if I plan it beforehand, I'll better get to know about the loopholes that it may present later. And when we know the loopholes already in advance, we can also work on the remedies, right? So not all the learners are at the same level, and we all know it. There's not something very new I'm telling here. So when we already know that there's a heterogeneous group out there, and I'm going to teach this particular topic or subject, I have to bring everybody on a certain level further, right? So if I plan it out in my annual curriculum plan, a better way, taking the academics and co-scholastic together, right? So it will be definitely it's going to be a very good plan that will cater to the need of every child across all the grades. So more of preparation, Pravina ji, preparation part, it has to happen with 200% effort.
Yes, planning ahead will give you a better result.
Important. It's important.
Yes, ma'am. So the next question is, in your opinion, what are some key skills and mindsets that students should develop to thrive in an environment of competition?
Well, it is targeting back to the teachers. If as a teacher, I'm a learner, right? I have no shame in telling to my colleagues that I do not know this skill and I won't learn it. I want to polish myself ahead. If I'm not a learner, how can I pass on that vibe to my student?
Mhm.
And we are not walking dictionaries. We are not walking encyclopedias, right?
Right.
So we also learn every day. And in this process of teaching, learning, we have come so far in all these years, right? And while we are dealing with these very smart learners out there, and we talk about the skills like decision making and leadership skills and whatnot, we also need to understand it's not the time of only being a leader or being a facilitator in the class who the students will be following further. It's the time of the ambidextrous leaders who will create leaders of tomorrow, right? So when we talk about raising competition bar among the students, again, we need to look for what in an year, what version of my student in a year I am going to plan out. I'm going to not only plan out, in fact, what I'm going to inculcate in my student so that he or she is the better version of himself or herself. So competition should be healthy, right? So when there are schools out there who particularly focus on it's either first, it's nothing. So I think rather than being into that race or being first, second, and third, it's more important we provide a short-term skill set for a child. This is particular mind map. So wherein you ask a child to write at least 3 skills he or she wants to learn in a 3-month span of time. And within that stipulated time, as a teacher, how can I help my learner? So once skill is developed, there will be the spirit of healthy competition among the child. And when there are approaches like collaborative learning available, so when we put on, again, I'm back to the innovative approaches, when we take up the innovative approaches, things will happen naturally.
Right, ma'am. So since we are running out of time, again, like 2 to 4 questions are left, very interesting questions.
Yeah, sure, please.
So are there any ethical concerns or potential drawbacks associated with adopting innovative approaches in education, ma'am?
So see, Pravina ma'am, as far as any kind of witches are concerned, when there is a problem, there is a solution, right? So there's nothing called opposite.
Right.
Bad exists because good is there. Night exists because day is there. And we only understand the value of something that is positive for us because negative is there, right? So there are always the loopholes, there are always the challenges. And I believe personally, if I have picked this profession, so I believe I'll find a solution to that challenge. As far as ethical challenges are concerned, towards innovative approaches, I do not think so. And I have not come across in all these 17, 18 years with certain kind of challenges with the innovation. There can be only one challenge, whether the head of the school will accept my approach, right? And that many teachers they have at the back of their mind before they approach further to plan out something, right? So that challenge, it remains there. But other than that, no such ethical challenges related to the innovative approaches so far.
All it counts is the approval from the manager.
Exactly.
Yes. So last but not the least, ma'am, what advice would you give to educators, parents, and policymakers looking to support and encourage innovation in education while mitigating the negative effects of inconsequential competition, ma'am? It's a very good question somebody asked. They didn't mention their name though.
Okay. It's actually a very interesting question. Could you just repeat that for me?
Yeah, they're asking what kind of advice would you give to educators, parents, and policymakers looking
Okay.
to support and encourage innovation in education while mitigating the negative effects of inconsequential competition?
Yes, it's indeed a very interesting question, Pravina ji. So, Pravina ji, you also very well second that thought of mine, that we are in an era wherein most of the things are just eyewash, right? Then the
Yes.
second point I would like to raise here is, when the educators, the policymakers, the principals, the teachers, the parents, everybody is in alignment along with the student, that we all are working for the betterment of student. We all are working together, planning together, drafting, devising everything together so that the student will be successful. But then also there are multiple conflicts, isn't it?
Yes.
So if, rather than putting a lot of pressure on percentage, we celebrate the individuality of the child, it is very difficult, let me tell you. And you must be thinking it's very easy for me to say on this portal, or for me to say as a principal. No, personally, I practice it. My son, he is in grade 10, and I have never pressurized him for the percentage, though he is an average child. He always scores between 80 and 85. That's fine for me. But I know that he is a very good writer. I know he is very good in technology. He is very good with softwares. He is very good with gaming. So why not, rather than talking about being an engineer, being a doctor, or being into civil services, we also promote other professions, and we also not, put that hindrance to the child's thoughts and choices. Let the child be whatever he or she wants to. What's wrong with that? Isn't it? So when we talk about how to convince the policymakers or the educators or the parents, every parent wants the child to excel in all fields, and it's not possible. So the individuality of the child is lost there. So if, rather than focusing on the number game, we focus on developing the skills, I think the simplest of the thing, it has the answer to all the questions, right? And if you ask me, or you just go back to the memory lane when you were a student, I may not have been very good at maths, or may not have been very good at languages, or any other subject for that matter. How does that matter if I know well how to deal with life issues? If I'm strong-headed, right? If I'm perseverant, if I have the willpower, I'll deal with everything. So rather than creating the students who are scoring 100% and creating the students, the humans who are more sensitive, who are thinking about giving it back to society, who are perseverant, who are tolerant enough, right? So I think we need to change our learning objectives back to it. We need to change our mindset towards it. And then probably we can make the education sector a better profession and a better place and a better learning space for the students. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, that's all for the day.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, ma'am.
Hello?